Greetings, folkaroos. It's Haley, and welcome back to a different kind of video. So, this week, the week that I'm uploading this, not the week that I'm recording this, I'm recording this actually a fair bit in advance, but this week, there is no chess meetup. They are not meeting due to the 4th of July. And so I was kind of racking my brain trying to figure out ideas for a video. And I just figured I'd throw together some extremely interesting and crazy games and we could just go over them together. And there's a fun one at the end. There's a pretty fun one at the end, but let's just scroll back and find this game. So, something you might not know about me and my sister is that we listen to K-pop. She's a much bigger fan than I am, but we're both fans. And one of our favorite bands goes by the name Blackpink, and Jenny and Jisoo are two of the members. It's Jenny's my favorite, and Jisoo's my sister's favorite. So when I'm because this is a game played by one of my favorite chess YouTubers. So sometimes when I'm reviewing these games, I like to put fun names, so it's just the ultimate matchup, but oh boy, that's going to be the least of the things on your mind when after we're done looking at this game, because it has more twists and turns than the Superman roller coaster at Six Flags. I know that doesn't exist anymore, but it has more twists and turns than that roller coaster or most other roller coasters. It's you don't know what the heck's going to happen. So let's just pop on the review here. The YouTuber that I watch is playing as Jenny here, and his opponent is playing as Jisoo on the white pieces. So white starts off with d4, and we already get funky because, like myself, this guy is a big fan of the Caro-Kann defense. But against d4, it is impossible to play the Caro-Kann defense. Because a move like c6 doesn't really do anything, because against the king's pawn, the Caro-Kann, the idea is to challenge the center and create pawn tension, right? But if you try to do the Caro-Kann against d4, you're not actually doing anything. Sure, you're stopping white from playing this, but they can just develop freely, and you're just over here blocking in your own knight for no good reason. Because in the Caro-Kann, oftentimes you might take with that pawn and then play knight c6 or play c5. So already it's a bit questionable when you think that you can just play the Caro-Kann against anything, but I'm just going to move past that for now because there's going to be other things. The opponent just calmly develops a knight, which is a good move. Then we get bishop to g4. He keeps trying to play the Caro-Kann against the London. This is the London system, by the way, from white. Bishop f4, knight f3, d4. Next is probably going to be e3. This is the London system. It's very hard to break. This YouTuber also likes to play the London system as white, so he should know that bishop g4 is not an especially testing move against the London. So yeah, the opponent plays h3, which is an inaccuracy because you can now take and wreck the structure. And the opponent takes back with the g-pawn, creating two pawn islands over here, and opening up this file, dissuading the king from castling over here. What he should have done was, I know he probably wants to try to go for e4, but what he should have done was just take here and then bring the bishop out to d3, and you just have an extremely solid position because this knight on f6 would be blocked by this pawn, right? And that's really black's only easy developing move at this time, other than knight d7, which might go to f6. So controlling that square is really good for white. But yeah, we get e6. He creates his pyramid of pawns. He's not blocking in any bishops, so I'm not complaining. e3. I mean, you may be like, Haley, why are you showing us this game? This looks like an extremely solid game, between two players who may misunderstand a few of the opening ideas, but believe me, it will turn into something much less than that. In this position, Black should trade bishops. And the reason for this is that you're trading pieces into an endgame where white has this structure. Like, remember what I said about doubled pawns, two pawn islands? If you get into a king and pawn endgame with just 8 versus 8 pawns, black wins every time because their structure is fully together and they have this pyramid of pawns. So it would be a wise decision for black to try to trade the bishops here. But instead, he goes bishop e7, which is a more passive developing square. Doesn't really make much sense here because there's nothing that you're stopping from coming over here. And you want to trade the bishops, like I previously said, for those reasons. But yeah, okay, rook g1. Jisoo here is taking advantage of the fact that this bishop move undefended the g7 pawn. So now black has to guard that. G6, great move by Jenny there. And maybe he has bishop f6, bishop g7 ideas, and maybe c5, and that pawn might fall. That absolutely does not happen, but that's something that might happen. Could happen. Bishop d3, active development of the bishop, but this light squared bishop's going to struggle because 7 out of 8 of black's pawns are on light squares, and it's the opening, so it's not like you can sneak around and get to the base of the pawn chain. This bishop is just staring into a bunch of like hard to take pawns. It's kind of a hard life. But here, black plays f5, which I don't like for a couple reasons. I mean, it may look good because you're like fortifying this square and you're blocking in the bishop more. But your pieces are not going to occupy this square because there's a pawn here. B, the bishop was already blocked in by this pawn sufficiently. And C, by pushing this pawn, e6 is now what's known as a backwards pawn. A backwards pawn is a pawn that cannot move forward, and there are pawns next to it ahead of it. It is a pawn that cannot move forward. The square in front of it is controlled so sufficiently that they will almost never be able to play that move. And if you will recall from maybe when I talked about the London in my previous videos, black's main goal is to try to play e5. So yeah, they're not going to do that. c3, just getting the classic London pawn structure from white. We get bishop. Okay, this move just like what exactly what is this threatening? You can't even play c5 anymore because this is still fortified. You're taking away the development square from your knight, so now you're just gonna have to put both of the knights next to the king queen like this. They're gonna have like a pillow fight over here or whatever they do. Like I don't know. They're just gonna be in real close quarters, so you have to have a little fun, you know. And it's like one of the ways to do it. I don't know. I'm in a weird mood today, but we get the first sign of the craziness that is about to ensue when white, just in a completely normal position, just decides to play bishop h6 and hang the bishop in one move. just, just a completely free bishop. I can't even begin to postulate at the reasons why this move was played. It doesn't attack anything. It doesn't threaten anything at all. Like white just did not know what to do, and just like I'm gonna go here and lose the bishop. And then they play knight a3. so so they're like, okay, I lost my bishop. So I mean, you know, it's 700 rated chess. So I still have a chance. I might as well move my knight out. It's the only square that I can move it to, really. Bishop e7. I like this move actually because it attacks this and it threatens to further damage white's pawn structure, creating this weakness and two more pawn islands. And we get c4, takes, fantastic, not complaining, and castles. Great. Jenny is playing a great game right now. We're just going to get maybe knight f7, knight d6, maybe knight d7, knight b6. We take some space on the queen's side, maybe queen a5, attacking some weaknesses. We can get takes, knight d7, knight b6, hitting the bishop. You know, I'm just kind of spitballing here on some plans, you know, knight f7 here, threatening to take the pawn. But Jenny in this position takes the, or I'm sorry, it was White's move. But yeah, E takes, then Rook B1. So you have to deal with this pawn. Queen D7, Queen B3 attacks this pawn, so you play B5. I don't hate it, but I don't love it. Because every pawn move weakens some things. And those two squares were tremendously weakened. This square doesn't really matter too much because White can't get to it, but the C5 square is going to still be pretty important. Like, because maybe a rook might want to go there at some point in the future, maybe double up. You just have to always be aware of these weak squares. And it's controlled by a pawn. This square is not controlled by any white pawn, so it's less important for you because it's like by default under your control, unless white tries to really pile pressure on it, and you could probably be doing something else at that time. So A4, Jisoo is trying to challenge this pawn here. A6, great move by black. Just guarding. We get E4, trying to break in the center. Of course, if takes, we get a pin. So hopefully that doesn't happen. Takes, knight f7. Right. Okay, so we're going to get this knight d6 threatening to take, right? That's what we're going to get. E5. Great move by white. Fantastic move by white. I love this. Sure, it opens up this, but that can easily be defended by bringing the bishop back and causing the queen to do that, and also knight g5 just isn't possible right now. So rook e8. Which is like, well, I can't play knight d6, so I might as well just move my rook over here. This knight has its squares now being all occupied, which is why queen d7 was kind of an inaccuracy earlier, because now this knight can't move, and therefore this rook is kind of stupid. But then white goes king f1. Here is where the chaos starts, because the only move for white to stay in the game here is sacrificing the bishop. Because the pawn takes and then the rook takes, there is an attack with queen g3, king e2, rook g1. That is the only way for white to create counterplay. If white does not do that, they are completely losing. We get king f1, which is a bad move also because it just blunders a pawn with a check. Rook to g2 blocks the check, but now you can go for this knight g5 idea, although it isn't really good right now. B takes a4, hitting the queen. I don't mind it. I don't really mind it, but you don't want to be doing this to your pawns. Queen c3, not even taking or going back to c2, just queen to c3. Just no idea what this is doing at all. Like, at least on c2, you're kind of pressuring some things, right? This doesn't really do anything at all. Check, rook blocks, good move. Check, rook blocks again. And now it would obviously be a terrible idea for black to repeat moves and draw the game because they're completely winning. So Jenny tucks her tail between her legs and goes back to d7 with the queen, further restricting this knight and again allowing bishop g6. But this time it is actually a draw because after h takes and rook takes check, king h7, we can get moves like rook f6 and queen h3 maybe in the future. And black's king is just way too exposed to the elements to be able for them to like actually launch an attack without their own king getting in danger. Like, black's king is basically just an erect house. But rook g1, queen e7, maybe clearing a square for this knight to develop. Bishop g6 is now winning for white, because after h takes and rook takes, and king h7, now queen to d3 can set up a pin. Wait, a discovery, right? And the best move is to sacrifice your queen for the rook. That's the best move for black. But of course, they're still losing because the king is out in the open. But rook e1, white does not find it. Now knight d7, blundering it again. And White finds it! Jisoo, or the YouTuber's opponent, pulls up with a brilliancy. Bishop takes G6, double exclamation point, takes, and rook takes. And now, how will black respond? The best move is king to h7 because queen h3 is not possible. And if white tries to get the king over, you just take the rook. Or actually, there's this ridiculous knight sacrifice because you're getting queen takes c5 with rook takes c5 check, and then you take this, and you're just completely winning because then you're going to take this and this, and you liquidate all the pieces. But yeah, king to f8 is what Jenny plays, or the YouTuber. Now completely losing because of queen to g3. And this is a mate threat. So you have to move and get your king some breathing room, or move the queen down here and get your king some breathing room. He goes queen to b4, check, king e7, queen h4 check. And on knight f6 is the best move, because if king to e6 were to be played, then rook to g6, and the king comes out here, and that's mate. So yeah, you don't want that to happen. So now knight f6, you have to sack the knight with a check, and then go to d7, lose that knight with a check, and then block with the queen. This is actually the engine-supported way to defend against this, because might I call your attention to the material count in this game? It is equal. The material is equal. This whole attack has only been white winning back their lost material from earlier. So if white stops attacking, it's basically a draw. So white has to keep attacking. Queen f5 check, and now the king might be safe. Yeah, rook g3. You needed to keep pressing on the gas with this and maybe play e6 or something like that, because now black can get back in the game, like threatening these checks and like so bringing the queen around this way. It's absolutely insane. But rook g8. Now black is trying to trade rooks. I understand the sentiment of trying to trade rooks, because when you're getting attacked, you want to trade the attacking pieces. But now rook c3 is very deadly, because you're going to double up, and there's not much that black can do to stop that. Like if rook here, trying to bring the rook up and defend, then e6, opening up another line of attack, and black is again in trouble. But rook g3, after rook g8, he plays e6 now. He plays e6 now, allowing a trade of rooks. But instead of taking, he plays c5. Why did you go here if you're not going to take? Like, what? I don't understand at all. Now rook c3 is all the more deadly, because now you have a weak pawn to attack, and you're not even doubled up yet. So you could still bring more firepower to the party. But rook c1 is played, which is a flipped move order, because you allow black to trade the rooks and then play rook f. Yeah, you allow black to trade the rooks and then pin the queen to the king. White and all the fricas forgot that their queen and king were lined up on the f file. But does Jenny find rook f8? Nope. Goes king d6, and now is completely losing again due to queen e5 check. But pawn takes is now played, and the king actually hides behind the pawn. This is a concept known as an umbrella pawn. It's where a pawn from the opposing side blocks an attacker on the king and temporarily keeps it safe. So g4, again blundering rook f8. But you move the rook one square over. One square over. Now the queen moves out of the way. Jisoo realizes that she was going to lose her queen. Rook to b2! And, folks, I think you probably see what's wrong with that move. That's just a free rook. Sure, you get a pawn in return, but queen b6 check is super deadly, because this pawn can now come through with a check, and it's mate in 10. I'm not going to go through the mate in 10, because we still have more chess to cover, but That is a deadly attack. But instead, we get an attack on the queen. Jenny, just completely careless, just snaps up another pawn as if the king is not getting absolutely ravaged by opponent's forces right now. Now, queen b6 is mate in 4, and I will show this one. Queen b6, king d7, queen d6, king c8, rook e8, king b7, and the queen to b6. Checkmate. But after queen to g4, you will never believe the move that Jisoo or the YouTuber's opponent plays in this position. You remember like the previous move, or like a couple moves ago when Black hung a rook to the queen? Yeah, wouldn't it be funny if White did the same thing? Wouldn't it be hilarious if now they're completely even because they both hung a rook to a queen diagonal? Like, what kind of funky coincidence is that? And now black is winning if white doesn't find queen b6. And white finds queen b6 in this position. King d7. And now you don't want to trade queens as white because you are down a pawn and your king is like super isolated. So that doesn't trade queens, but what it does do is blunder a pawn. And oh my god. So not only did you trade queens, which would have been like a semi-acceptable thing to do here, you have to blunder your most advanced pawn and then trade queens. And now this is completely losing. If and only if, by the way, the king gets to the corner. The king has to get here. A3, right? A3, king c4, king c2, d3. If the king runs to the corner, this pawn goes. So if the king goes over here, then king to d4. You have to take the opposition, force the king back. King here, here. This is a draw because of this. So now you go here, king d1, and then you go here. Wait, no. See how tricky it is to win? Like, now you play A5. Oh my. This this is only winning if you have A5. If this pawn was on A4, this would be a draw. Because by playing A5 and passing the move back to white, you force king E2. And now king C2, and either this pawn's going to promote or you go here, you take this, move out of the way, and this pawn promotes. But if black misplays it and allows the white king to get to that square, it will be a draw no matter how many A pawns black has. So A5, so far he's doing okay. A3, king D5, great, take the opposition. Now go here. You can go here, here, and then push. Perfect. Now push. Great job. Jenny is playing this perfectly. Now king to D4. It may look good because after this and king takes a3, it looks like you're just going to step here and promote the pawns. King c2. And even if you go king a2, king c1, king a1, king c2, you're eventually going to have to move the pawns, and then king b3, and you just lose them. You can't allow the white king to get to the corner. And that is exactly what black did. The white king got to the square that I said it can't get to. Check. Goes to the corner. This is one last chance to blunder the game, of course. You can't blunder a check there. King a1 and king a3, and it ends in a stalemate, and it's a draw. You know, as they say, chess, when played perfectly, is a draw. Now, that was a perfect game, if I do say so myself. Oh my goodness, and that's only the first game of this video, folks. I have 3 more games for you. We have Guy 1 and Guy 2 here. This game is a little bit less absolutely insane and more just like stupid, but this is like a random game that I found. like in my library for some reason, because I went through this phase where I had a game of the day. Like I like picked like a low rated player and like picked their most ridiculous game that they played that day, and that was the amazing Haley game of the day. And this was the game of the day for what was it? Oh, I don't have the date, but I think it was like November 22nd, 2022 or something. This was the game of the day. Guy 1 against Guy 2. And let's hop into it. E4. Knight f6. This is the Alekine's defense, which is a very edgy way to play against the king's pawn because you essentially provoke white into playing this and then hop your knight into the center, allow white to get a big, big pawn center, and then just gently chip away at it with d6. c4 hits your knight. You just hop back to b6, and then ed6 even. It can go CD6, knight C6, and you just slowly chip away at that center that you let white get. I don't play it because I don't see a reason why you should allow white to get that big pawn center, but black clearly does not have the same chess philosophy as I have. But yeah, white doesn't either because when they see a knight in the middle of the board, their first instinct is not to attack it. Their first instinct is to defend the pawn and block in their bishop. Not great, but it's still okay. It's still a line. It's the Marozzi variation, which is named after a famous player. They also have a line in the or a formation in the Sicilian defense named after them, the Marozzi bind. But e6, right? This possibly could be preparing d5. And now white plays e5. I don't know what's different about this position to play e5 here. Oh, and we already get a crazy move. And that white is like, okay, I can't go back and attack the pawn this way. So, you just attacked me, but now I attack you. But do you see what's wrong with that move? Yeah, there are two pawns in the way of that bishop's protection of the knight, and it can just be taken by the queen. But it was not taken. Instant bishop to g5 was played, attacking black's queen with no protection whatsoever. Yeah, this is what I like to call me attack queen mode or me attack rook mode. Is it's like if a caveman were to learn English and play chess, he'd be like, me attack queen, good move. Right? Like it's just kind of like a primitive, like, ooh, you see queen, go for it, like kind of mindset. So me attack queen, and then black says, me take free bishop. Me easy win. And black is 100% right. Like this is they should go on to win from this position. F3 to kick the knight out, blundering either queen e3 or queen takes c5 check. But black just plays knight h6. Just afraid. Maybe they're trying to rotate over to f5 and pressure some of these dark squares, but something tells me that a 500 rated player is not thinking about knight rotations and weak squares in the middle of the board. So f4 attacking the queen with 0 protection. This seems to be a thing for white. Like white must just get a dopamine hit when they play a move that attacks the queen. They're like, if black doesn't see it, I can take the queen on the next move. Like that gives them like some kind of thrill or something because this all it does is hang a pawn, and now your king is all the more open. I just don't get it at all. But black gets scared, trusts white. Like this is what one of my favorite chess YouTubers says. He says like, don't prove your opponents right. Don't make your opponents look like geniuses. Your opponents are the same rating as you. They're just as stupid as you are. Like white hung a pawn for free. And then black was like, they must have some dastardly plan, so I'm going to go back to d8. So just don't believe your opponents. You have to analyze the position yourself before you believe your opponent's threats, right? Knight d2, just developing a knight. I don't know why you can't just go here. Uh, f6, trying to challenge the pawns. Well, I mean, you could have gone d6 or even d5 and then developed and hoped that maybe white knew about en passant. Something tells me that white probably doesn't know about en passant. E takes, queen takes. That's a good exchange for black. You have some pressure along this diagonal. White does not see that at all. Instead, activates the queen to the square and it's like, if they move their bishop, I can take the b7 pawn. I'm super smart. But like black doesn't. But first of all, black can't even move the bishop on this move. But even if this pawn was here, black doesn't have to go here. Black has like a gazillion other moves that they could play. Like all this does is take away two development squares, or just one development square from your knight. The most common development square. Bishop to b4. This is another unga bunga caveman kind of thing. He's like, ooh, me pin knight. Your knight can't move. But c3, and that's what white plays. Just like, yeah, I don't have to let your bishop pin my knight. I can then go here and then maybe play knight e4 and attack your queen, and I maybe go back into the game. Knight f5! I mean, maybe the idea of knight h6 was to rotate the knight, but black chose to do it at exactly the wrong moment because they hung their bishop. And now white is the only reason white is still completely lost is because of their pawn structure and the fact that this queen is hitting this, right? But black is back in the game, or white is back in the game material wise. b6. Oh my! So, that, like I said earlier, black has. Let me. You know what? Let me count the legal moves that black has in this position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33. Black has a grand total of 33 legal moves in this position, and he picks possibly the one of like this has got to be in the top 5 of the worst out of those 33 moves. He plays pawn to b6, just completely justifying this queen move. Remember how I said, like, ooh, if black moves the bishop, I take the pawn. But black literally just moved the pawn and opened up that poor rook to just die. But white forgot that the queen hit that diagonal and instead backs up to d1. But white was like, oh, they might put the bishop there and attack my queen, but the bishop would be a free piece, and then you take the rook because they can't protect the rook. You just lose 2 pieces if bishop e7 were to be played. But then black plays b5. so So black misclicked with pawn to b6. Was like, oh, sorry, I meant to play b5 because I want to just control some squares over here. Oh my god, I'm getting lightheaded from laughing at this. I mean, I laugh at myself just as much as I mean, I'm gonna laugh at myself in that last game that I'll show you. Believe me. Knight to b3. This just rotates the knight out and hits some of these dark squares. It's good activation. I don't mind it. E5. Um, when your king is in the center, it's not a good idea to just open up that line. It's never a good idea, which is why it's not a good idea for white to take that pawn. Like white should just be like, okay, I'm gonna go back to f3 and hit your rook, or I'm gonna go check you, or something like that. But white plays knight to d2. So the point of knight b3 was to play knight d2 and knight e4. When they could have played knight e4 like a bunch of moves ago and attacked the queen. Like, what's different about this position? E takes f4, knight e4. Like, what's different? I don't understand. Why does white play knight e4 now and not like here? Why does white not play knight e5 here? I don't understand. White only now plays it. Queen to dip. This is the most insane. So Black's queen is under attack by the knight, and they move it to the other square attacked by that knight, and they lose it. And White actually takes it. And now, oh my god, this has to be the end, right? Like we're gonna play Queen H5, G6, like maybe not H6, but like you can go back and hit this and hit the rook, and you're just gonna start cleaning up all these weak pieces, right? Check, great move. King to E7, not even G6. He just drops the knight in one, just like loses more material. Rook to F8. Ta- Oh, in chess, it's always a good idea to see what your opponent is threatening. They moved here to attack your queen, so you should move out of the way and check the king and win the rook in the corner. That is what you should do here. But instead, you just take a free pawn, which is not free at all because this is just going to happen. But okay, so let me give you a little more insight on this game of the day thing that I used to do. All of the games of the day had one thing in common. They had one or more insane plot twists in them. And here comes the first plot twist in this one because with a free queen, Black plays this and misclicks. I assume misclicks. But I mean, come on. Like who would play that? Maybe they hallucinated the bishop was protecting it. And they misclick and then lose the rook. And now they are down 14 points of material. So for anybody, right, this should be an easy cleanup. Pawn to d5, free pawn. And that rook is trapped in the corner. You're just going to pick that up as well. Bishop b7, just take the bishop. Okay. I mean, we lose the queen, but we still have a 9-point material advantage, and Black hasn't developed their two remaining pieces, and this is now a hanging. So d6, that does nothing to address either of Black's issues. Rook d1. Yeah, White also has issues with development too, like pawns. Like Black loves moving pawns, and White, as it turns out, loves moving their rook and pawns. E5 takes rook there with the fork. Yeah, White just loves moving that rook because they play check, and then instead of taking the pawn, they go down here to freeze the knight in defense of the rook, which is good. But like you can just go king d7, and then you're gonna have to take the pawn, and then he can develop the knight. Like this isn't the most clean way to do things. But now Black goes a6 because they can't move either of their pieces, so they want to maybe free up the rook in the future to move. Rook d8 check, and then he moves the rook back here. Like the dude cannot decide what pawn he wants to take. Like he can't decide if he wants to take this one, if he wants to take this one, if he wants to take this one. Like there's just too many options for him. It's like he's at a Golden Corral, like all you can eat uh, buffet of pawns, and he can't decide which one he's in the mood for. Rook h8, g6, and he goes after the g pawn, and it's pinned, and Black can't move it. So h4 takes, and the king starts walking up into the center of the board. Bishop takes b5. White just sacrifices a bishop for no reason, but again, still 7-point material advantage, so shouldn't mean anything. Knight e2. We get a knight into the game. Great. Knight c6. Now Black activates both of their remaining pieces. Check. The king comes forward. Rook c6. Excuse me. The king should not have come forward that way. The king should have at least gone here because that's a material trade. Like, you at least trade material, but here you're just like, yeah, go ahead, take my knight. I don't care. Rook c. So, a piece, right, such as a rook, cannot attack that same piece on the other side. Because that piece can just take it. Like, a rook can't attack a rook, a queen can't attack a queen, a bishop can't attack another bishop. So it's not an attack. You're just initiating a Mexican standoff where you have zero protection, and you're just gonna die. Like the rook just got sent to the chopping block. It sat here the whole time, and then just moved once and perished instantly. Like, this is a sad life for that rook. E3, like black has almost nothing left. This is like the only thing that remains for them. Castles. E2. You can just take this with check. Check. Okay. King c4. You can still take this with check. Rook c8. Okay, we're giving more checks. A3. Okay, like I would definitely take this pawn because it is hitting your rook, so I would be careful. Rook a8 check. Okay. King b3. Rook c8. Maybe we're gonna come down here. H3. Black has nothing left. The computer recommends promoting and then taking on b2. Like, that's how bad black's position is. Rook c3 check. King a2. The king is hiding. How can white get to the king? Like, you just need to take the pawn and then maybe promote and, like, check on this diagonal and mate like this. Like, that's how white needs to win this game. Rook c1, right? Defends the promotion. It's a bit slow of a move. King takes b2, and white makes perhaps the most inexplicable move I've ever seen. This was the grand plot twist of the game, because down or up an astonishing 13 points of material with mate in 7 on the evaluation, white played the move rook c to c8 and hung mate in 1. And that's why this was a game of the day. Oh my god, that, like, black had one thing, one possible thing. That pawn could have been taken by that knight like 6 moves in a row, and none of that would have ever happened. Oh my god. Okay. So now our third game, we come to a bit of an interesting one because I have another account. Um, like, you see the accuracies here. I have another account which is really low rated that I try to purposely lose on because sometimes it's like a bit refreshing to change chess up a little bit, even though like I really love it and I like playing it. Sometimes it's fun to change it up a little bit and think a little bit differently. So this was a game that I was trying to lose, but the Haley philosophy for trying to lose chess is like you don't just blunder all of your pieces. You have to you have to make losing moves that look like that a beginner thought they might be a good move. Like you have to make it look convincingly like a beginner's playstyle. So you can't just go like literally sacking your queen for a pawn every game. That wouldn't be any fun at all. So let's begin to show you the art of how to lose at chess in a convincing manner. E4. So, guy with less brain cells than his rating. He has 1 rating, so that implies that he has less brain cells, of course. Plays me, nerfed Haley, when I was about 1200 rated. This was like a couple years ago. So, E5, knight F3, knight F6. Of course, this is the opening that all beginners play, e4, e5. And I play knight f6 because the thinking behind that is, you take my pawn, I take your pawn. Even trade. And that's exactly what happened. And this is inaccurate for black because queen e2 is possible with a pretty devastating threat. If you move the knight back to f6, then knight c6 wins the queen. So that's an interesting trap. So there, queen e2, black would have to play queen e7, and the game goes on like this with white having a slight advantage. But after white plays bishop c4. Like, this is a very predictable beginner move because me target f7. Me target f7 with 2 pieces. So as a beginner, you might not see this. Obviously, the best move is to play d5 and hit the bishop, and then maybe play like knight c6 and trade for the knight and just have this, or go back to f6. But the beginner sees the knight here, and they're like, I'm going to kick out the knight. And my favorite chess YouTuber, the amazing Haley, always tells me to not block in my bishop, so I'm going to play f6 instead. And this is not a fan of my channel, because the thing that I probably say more than that is don't move the f pawn if you don't have a good reason, because it weakens your king. So don't do that. Like, this is a very common way that beginners lose the game. And to my utter shock, my opponent did not just simply move their knight back. They played the correct move, which is queen h5, g6, and knight takes g6. They played this. And the idea is to take and take the rook, or at least so I thought, because I captured back, and he played the best move. Queen takes. Because you're going to attack the king, right? You don't want the rook, you're going to attack the king. King e7, and there's a forced mate in 9 here with queen takes e4, king to d6 is forced, queen to d5, king back to e7, short castles to bring the rook over. Black doesn't have much things to do. Anticipating this, they play queen to e8 to clear a space for the king to go to. Rook takes, king takes. Then queen f7, king d8. Queen takes f6, king back to e8, and bishop to f7 mate. Right? That is the forced mate. So after king to d6, like, I'd say this is a fairly convincing job losing the game plausibly, because I have a king on d6 on move 8. Like, just look at my position. I've blundered mate. But he takes his foot off the gas a little bit and plays pawn to d4. Now I get it. He's trying to anchor a square, probably. So like, as a beginner, what do you think here? You're like, okay, I've got to develop my pieces. I have got to develop my knight. And opponent here plays knight c3, developing their pieces. And I come up with a funny idea here. I'm like, knight to b4. And my idea here was to pretend that I thought that this was just a clean fork of rook. And king, forgetting that the queen guards it. Because beginners are absolutely fascinated by this knight fork. Like, that it happens a lot in their games, and they go for it super, like, they just play like the most random knight b4s, going for these forks all the time. So this is very beginner behavior from me here. Knight to d5, though. And in this position, I kind of change my mind, because now that the knight moves, the beginner might see that this is guarded, because there's less things in that area. So I'm like, I see a knight next to my king, gotta kick it out. Right? Like, that's only logical. c3, counterattacking my knight. And now I can just play this, getting my knight out of the way and just winning a piece back, which is what I do. Because some beginners, like, most beginners, throw in a couple good moves every once in a while. Like, there are hardly any beginners that play, like, all bad moves. Like, sometimes they see that they can take a knight. Bishop f4, there is only one move in the position, since my king is completely immobile, and that's knight takes f4. Opponent takes with the queen. I go to e7, which is forced. Again, there's a lot of forced king moves. King to d6 is forced, and I was afraid he was going to force repeat a draw here, and I wouldn't lose any rating points, because I want to get to the lowest score, which is 100. But he castles, right? And now this is a much better position for black, because black can run the king to c7 and then put the bishop on d6 and actually set up an attacking idea on that side of the board. So I play king to c7, but for a completely different idea. My idea is to slide back to b8, put the queen on c7, threaten a mate on h2, and see how long it takes for white to notice that I'm threatening checkmate. That was my goal here. d5, great move, by the way, just trying to break up the structure in front of my king. I go king to b8, check, and I didn't like this, because I thought he was just going to instantly trade, and I wasn't going to be able to do that. But He actually played queen takes f6. This is the first move where he just cleanly hangs a mate on h2. And now, this is the most challenging part of these games, because now I have to find a logical way to play other moves other than queen takes h2. But luckily, in this position, there's other logical things that I could do, such as my rook is being attacked. I'm going to move it out of the way. Right? That's pretty logical. Now d6 hits the queen and my rook at the same time and just wins clean material for white, but instead they play d takes c6, pawn in front of my king, so I take it back. Again, the rook is on g8, so I'm not threatening mate, but believe me, it'll happen again. b4, he's just like launching pawns towards my king. Now d5 is just winning here for black because you attack the bishop, and I play it because, again, beginners play good moves sometimes, and a lot of times these beginners, they know how pawns move, right? So they're going to be like, oh, I have a pawn here and I can attack the bishop, so it must be a good move. In this case, it is a good move, but it's not always a good move to just attack a piece like this. Bishop e2, and now attack queen, unga bunga, me attack queen, ooh ooh kind of move there. And then he plays this. He just hangs the queen, and this was the most challenging part of the game. I was like, how can I possibly not take this queen and make it look like I'm actually a real player? So I kind of played rook h8. I'm like, well, if you don't take my queen, then I'm gonna have checkmate again, and now I have to find other things to do, because the reason he played queen e3 in this position is because bishop g7 threatens this, right? So he's like, oh, wait, my pawn is hanging. I have to defend my pawn. I played bishop b7 because I'm fianchettoing my bishop, and I might play this and open up. He goes bishop to g4, and then I play a5, trying to exchange pawns and maybe activate my rook over here. By the way, if we're counting, this is the second move he blundered mate, third move, fourth move, I take, he blunders it a fifth time by playing a4. I play this, attacking the rook, and he blunders it a sixth time by initiating a trade on this diagonal. Boom, boom, seventh time he blunders mate. And in this position, I play d4 because I want to get takes and attack the rook, because attacking the rook must be a good move. And he's blundered mate for 7 consecutive moves, by the way, 6 consecutive, and then one earlier. Actually, well, now it's 7 consecutive moves. Because it's mate and 2 in this position, takes, and then queen h1. And I play takes, and then I don't play the follow-up mate. Now I take, guarded by the bishop, and then I want to push up and attack the rook. That's what I want to do. King to e1 tries to get more space for the king, but this is still a devastating idea because the king can't actually escape. Rook to e8. This move I was proud of because, queen king on the same line. Favorite YouTuber, the amazing Haley, says all the time, queen and king on the same line, you should look for rook moves. But what I say also is that your rook has to be protected. Like, that's usually implied. But I'm like, ooh, I win the queen, right? Nope. Opponent actually finds that. King c7. And he re-blunders, by the way. A full 2 rooks, because takes wins both rooks with this fork. But actually, now is the exact wrong moment to play this check, because now the king goes up to e2, and if I take the rook, then I am losing because rook takes c6, queen d7, and rook c8 is forced mate in 4. And I saw that. But instead, I found a bit more funny of a way to blunder that. I'm like, ooh, I attacked the rook and I get a rook, but I forgot that my queen was there. Because sometimes when beginners do things on the other side of the board, they forgot they moved a piece all the way over here. Rook takes a4. I get a free pawn. He goes there, attack my bishop. I defend the bishop with the rook. He goes here, double attacking the bishop. I attack the queen, and he plays a great move. When you're down in chess, when you're up in chess, just simplify the material. And He gets it to this position, and I resign because no beginner knows how to mate with king and rook, and I don't want it to end in a 50 move draw. And I successfully lose my rating points while having a absolutely insane game. Now, folks, we get to the grand finale of this video. It is so. I'm going to introduce this by saying, once upon a time in 2022, I played this game against a mystery opponent. And the mystery opponent is someone from either my friend group, right, or my family. It's one of those two. And for those who know my friend group and family, as the game goes on, you'll probably be able to eliminate some suspects. But at the end of the game, I will reveal who the mystery opponent is. So yeah, let's just get into the game. So I start off with e4 because this is 2022. I play literally nothing but e4. I play the Rui Lopez all the time. Knight f3, bishop b5. So we get, but instead, a mystery opponent goes e6, which is the French defense, and I don't really like seeing this. And actually, I go into the advance, which is not something that I do nowadays because your center can just get pressured very easily like this. And I don't like that. But mystery opponent plays f6, which is not really a great move because you don't have to take. You can just like develop, and if takes, this pawn restricts development of the knight, and it's going to take black a few extra moves to move around like this. And knight f3, and this pawn also blocks in the bishop, so black has like a not really too great position. But I justify this f6 move by taking and letting black bring their knight out. Already off to a great start. My justification for this was to pin the knight. Unprotected bishop, by the way, this is like very red alarm bells usually have to be ringing. Like, you have to make sure there's no ridiculous sacrifice that the opponent can do and take this bishop, but there's no sacrifice here. Bishop to e7, very principled move, getting in the way of the pin and preparing to castle. Like, mystery opponent, with the exception of the opening, is playing very well so far. c4, right? I'm trying to get takes and maybe bishop takes and queen e2 maybe to pressure that pawn. And by the way, keep in mind that this was me from 2022, so my skill level was probably about half what it is now, but still, this is an interesting game. Knight c6, I do not like this move for mystery opponent, and the reason why is because in the French defense, c5, right? You need to strike back at the center and then develop the knight. You don't want to get in the way of your pawn. Excusez-moi. So, yep, knight f3 develops. I'm keeping an eye on that e5 square. Mystery opponent castles, right? There's absolutely zero danger this bishop, and they're just going to play h6 on the next move. Bishop d3. Like, this is a bit weird of a move. And now black can immediately strike in the center with e5 and try to open things up and get some trades, and they're already better because they just open up a bunch of lines in the middle. So mystery opponent so far is really holding their own against me. Bishop to d6. So, I mean, you might have some guesses as to who this is, but I will not reveal it until the end. Again, it could be from friend group or family. So bishop to d6. This bishop is actually going to turn out to be a deadly killer, right? Like, opponent's just going to get two bishops set up and just absolutely snipe down the right side of the board. Castles. I get the king at the center. And e5. Opponent, principled move, striking in the center, creating a threat on this pawn, forcing me to deal with that, and threatening the fork on e4. So I have to deal with that. Very nice move. C takes. Knight takes d4. Like, most people would just snap back here with the knight and lose the queen, like most beginners. But mystery opponent, in their genius, saw that my bishop was still there. So they were like, oh, I can recapture this pawn instead. Takes and takes. And we have a bit of a strange position here where this pawn is isolated. And the way that I would go about this nowadays is to develop the knight to d2 and then out to either f3 or b3 to attack it with the knight. But I get a little bit ahead of myself back then and play queen to a4, just going after the pawn like this. And there's a ridiculous tactic here for mystery opponent, but they did not find it. Bishop takes h2. Remember what I said about this bishop being unprotected and the fact that there could be sacrifices taking advantage of it. Knight g4, king g1 here, and the threat is queen here and queen h2 mate. But mystery opponent unfortunately did not find that and instead went bishop to d7, challenging the queen. And I throw in a bit of a fancy strike here. I play bishop takes f6. And there are three ways that you can recapture this. One of them is a bunch better than the others. Obviously, you can't take back with the queen because you lose the bishop, right? You can't take back with the pawn because you don't want your king to be open. So the best move by far is rook takes f6. And this is what mystery opponent plays. And then after I take on d4, they punish me by playing rook to f4, taking advantage of my queen's positioning, maybe going to develop the queen and double the rooks on the f-file. And like I said, these bishops are just beasts. Like, my king has no defensive forces, and they're just able to activate their rook like this with an attack on my queen. So I go back, and now they play a bit of a slow move. Like, they should already be going queen g5 and doubling up the rooks, but they play a6. Not really sure what that move is about. Now I have time to play knight c3 with this idea to reroute to e2 and hit the rook 2 times. They play bishop to b5. This is a bad move because it just loses a pawn for no reason, and with an attack on your most powerful piece being that bishop. But I don't take. I instead throw in knight e2 first, which is inaccurate because the rook can go to b4 and defend the bishop, and now I'm not winning any material at all. Takes and takes. Now they have two more open lines on my queen side, as well as this over here. I'm just getting pressured here. White is better in this position because they can just I can just create a wedge, right? I can just create a wedge, but I don't do that. I played queen c3 for whatever reason. Kind of unga bunga thinking by me. Like, they could just play c5. This protects this. They could also bring this rook down, which is what they do. Like, this just looks funny, but it's actually surprisingly effective because these rooks basically section the board off. And this pawn might become isolated. Like, you attack this knight, right? And then the rook defends. You could put the queen behind, bring the rook back, and maybe triple up on that file. And I'm under some serious pressure. But a3 attacks the rook. The rook moves over to h4. Now the idea might be queen f6, queen h6, going after this, or also just the direct attack on h2 by bishop and rook. And do I defend that? Absolutely not. So, I blunder a mate. Mystery opponent missed a mate in 5 here with bishop takes here, and a very common idea. Bishop g3, sacrificing the rook and bringing the queen here. Now, that would have been crushing if I lost like this, but they did not find that. Instead, they took advantage of my queen's positioning. If bishop takes h2 didn't exist, this would be a fantastic move. Boom. Wait, never mind. They play that next move because I'm too stupid to realize the threat. Queen e6, king h8, and g3, and I attack the rook. I attack the rook. Do you see the problem with this? Right? I'm like, oh yeah, I attack the rook, and then I might go here, move the knight, and try to mate. Folks, I just lost a knight. It's very simple. I just lost a knight, and I cannot fork because this hits the queen and gets a tempo. So, and there's no way that I can move and defend my knight because the geometry is so, This is only possible because mystery opponent brought both of their rooks down to this file. This is only possible because of that. So I just lose my knight, and now I am down 2 points of material. So how do I manage to fight back? Let's see. Rook f to e1. I'm initiating trades, which I don't like, but clearly my idea was to try to dominate this because I saw the weakness of the back rank being my only chance at getting back into this game. Rook to d2. Mystery opponent does not want to trade, instead wants to keep up the pressure with maybe queen f6 threatening queen f2. Queen e6. Now I'm threatening to come down here, by the way. Like if mystery opponent does nothing, I'm threatening to come down here and deliver a swift end to the game, but they just simply move the queen to the other side, and now this does not come with the tempo on the king, and now they can do whatever they want, and they're threatening queen f2 and queen h2 mate, which I don't stop. I just lose the game to that. But they take with the wrong piece. They take with the wrong piece. Ugh. And now I have a chance again because I go queen to e8. I pin the queen, but still there's no threats of mate because the rook defends the queen and so does the bishop. So I have zero threats of mate even if I triple up. Like that's not scary for mystery opponent at all. Rook d4. Looking to take that pawn and maybe invade with both of the rooks and get like maybe 3 cannons on this file once the king gets to safety. Rook c1, not sure what that's all about. I just lose a pawn. I then take the queen, rook takes, and I double up. I am super persistent in my attack on mystery opponent's back rank. But they are resolute in their drive, and they play c5. They are going to advance and try to crack and create a passer over here. I just have multiple problems to deal with, and here I am still trying to get a back rank checkmate. Rook d3. Just this rook is dominating my king. I cannot get involved. This rook bisects the board like this. Even though it is pinned, it stops my king from going like this. Rook takes f8. Here, I pin. How do you defend this as black? Multiple ways. Rook f3, check, rook f1, or king g8. Just the very simple king g8. And the next move is going to be king f7, and mystery opponent's king is going to get in the game. Uh-oh, spadudios. That's not very good for me. Rook b8 attacks the pawn. Mystery opponent defends the pawn. I play b3, maybe because I want to try to play a4, because it's literally like one of the only things that I can do. Rook c6. Not sure what that move was all about. That's a bit of a head scratcher. Takes, right? And now mystery opponent's just gonna like move the rook out of the way and try to go for this and try to create a passed pawn like that. Like, if mystery opponent can create a passed pawn here, well, this is a passed pawn, but if they can get rid of this and have this, then it's just over. Like, I'm cooked. Rook d6. Just threaten to come down here, maybe wrap around with a check and try to force my rook to play defensive. Rook there, c5 or c4. Here comes the pawn. Now I have to stop that pawn. King f2. I get my king involved because now the rook is no longer dominating me as much. Rook d2 check. They can take another pawn, but they don't. They play h6. I'm not sure why exactly they let me take that because now my a pawn is passed, but doesn't really matter. King f7, a5, g5. Now they're kind of letting me back in the game a little bit. Like this was a bit of a sloppy endgame from them. So a6, yeah. Now they've got to deal with my pawn here. So king e7. They're trying to walk over here and touch my rook. Obviously, that's the idea. a7. Rook a2. Just in time, we pull up with the rook and force me to defend laterally. Remember what I say about being forced to defend laterally? The pawn can never move forward. Check. Whoops. Check. King f6. King e4. Now I have to start bringing my king. That's the only way I can get that pawn through. c3. Like, I have news for you, by the way. If this pawn gets far enough, I can make all the queens I want. They're just going to sacrifice that rook and then promote this pawn. Like, it's over. The game is over. King d5, h5, even trying to like clarify things over here. King to c6, king e6, taking opposition, check, king f5. Now, satisfied with the situation over here, mystery opponent is like, now I'm just going to take these pawns and create another problem for you. h4, not takes. King d7, attacking the bishop so it moves back. This is the beginning of a little maneuver to put the bishop on h6 and then move the king and have the bishop protect the promotion square. So if this pawn goes one more, protected by the rook, then it can promote with the protection of the bishop. Takes. King e8. I help mystery opponent get their bishop to the optimal square. King d8, king g6. Uh-oh. That pawn now has the red carpet rolled out for it, and I cannot stop it. I'm going to lose this game to someone from my friend group or family when I'm supposed to be the best chess player. Boy, is this humiliating. King c8, c2. Remember what I said. King b8. They don't even make a queen. Watch how savagely they play this next sequence of moves. They absolute cold-blooded move. King f6. They're just like, go ahead, make the queen if you want to. Takes. And king f5. You can stop me if you want to. I'm just going to simplify things to where I have a pawn. I'm going to go down. I'm going to take your pawn. And then I'm going to make a queen. And in this position, I resigned. So, do you have any guesses as to who this might be? And the answer is, this is a game that I played on April 6th, 2022 against my sister, the middle child of the family. We played this on the drive back from like the supermarket or something. We were just passing the phone back and forth. I can very rarely convince her to play a chess game against me. And by the way, folks, that game that you just saw, she has never played chess before, never practiced, never studied any openings, middle games, end games, thinks she's terrible at the game, like was constantly doubting herself the whole time, never wants to play another game after this. And I can't help but see that as a case of squandered talent after looking at this game. Like, I had been practicing for about a year at this point, and she just pulls up with zero practice, just natural ability, just absolutely kills me. And then now it's just like, oh, I'm bad at chess. I don't want to play. I'm going to get embarrassed. Like, if you're somehow watching this, know that you should start playing chess again if you get into it. Like, you could definitely be better than me because you were at this point in time. And with that, I've been the amazing Haley, and I will see you in the next video.